Welcome to the Human Performance Series, and I'm joined today by Charlie, who's here to talk about himself. Charlie.
Hello.
Lovely to meet you. So, would you like to tell me more about yourself, what you're about?
Yeah. So, I'm Charlie. I have fairly recently graduated uni, about 6-7 months now. And I'm currently running a startup called EcoCool, and we design and build sustainable air conditioning.
It's a very interesting business idea. How does one get to the stage of thinking about such a thing?
It was quite organic, to be honest. I think I'm an engineer, and my business partner who we founded it with was an engineer as well. And we were looking on a roasting summer. Not that we have a ridiculous amount of those, but it was this summer just gone. A few roasting days, and the summer before that, a few roasting days. And we were like, right, we need a solution to cool everyone down. And looked at what was available on the market. And it was either ridiculously expensive, ridiculously high energy consumption, awful for the environment, pumping refrigerants out. And we were like, right, we're two engineers. We can do better. So we tried.
I think it's such a great idea. With the business idea, was there a particular stat or fact that you heard about, air conditioning that you really wanted to change?
Yeah, well, I think quite a compelling one is if you were to add a single air conditioning unit to a standard British home, that would double the energy consumption of that house. That's not something the British public are able to do. I think that's not something we can afford to whack that on top of everything you're already doing.
I mean, you're going after a mammoth task. I can imagine your days are extremely packed. Has there been any challenges recently that you've really had to work very hard to overcome?
Busy is fine. Busy and varied is a bit complicated. And I think especially for me, there's stuff with the business, stuff with other work, fitting your family, health, everything else around that. That's when things get a bit complicated. And I think kind of managing those different buckets and making sure you're giving the time and attention you need to your family, your fitness, alongside the stuff that is slightly less flexible. That's the hardest part, because things that kind of aren't 100% requirement, you got a deadline, they're easy to let slip, which is something that takes a bit of work. I'm not there learning, but first step is realising, right?
Yeah, so no, 100%. It can be very overwhelming at times, but do you have, any tools or tips of, getting through the day, staying productive, staying on top of things?
Time blocking your day down to what you have to get done on either a mental basis or actually physically checklist of things to do just helps you make sure you're not missing those buckets. And I think making sure you treat the slightly less tangible ones, time with family, time for yourself, time to reflect on how things are going, treating them with kind of equal weight is really important, as well as the meetings you have to go to, the travel, things like that. Trying to find a balance there, I've found is quite a powerful tool.
100%. I mean, especially when you've got so much within the day, it's like you need to know where you are, what time.
Exactly.
Are there any daily habits that you have that you think set you up for success?
It's a very broad one, but strive for consistency. Motivation comes and goes, but if you're able to be consistent, not necessarily delivering 100% on everything you're doing every day, but showing up to those things. Fitness is a good example because it's very tangible and obvious, but had a long day, you've got a run you've got to do. Going on that run is half, if not more, all the battle. And if you're able to do that consistently, you're making those tiny, tiny baby steps every day, and then you're making progress.
I find it interesting using the analogy of essentially getting out the door for running, because I would say that directly relates to what you're trying to do in terms of starting your own business. Getting your foot out of the door for your business must have been a difficult initial step.
I agree, it's not the easiest thing to do in the world, but having that support network around you with some people who encourage you to take that step when there's not necessarily kind of the intrinsic motivation to do it, because some of these are big and scary, or at least sound bigger and scary than when you're doing it.
And how do you stay motivated? You said 2 years you've been doing it for?
Up to 2 years.
So that's a good amount of time. What motivates you for another decade, 2 decades, however long it is?
like we were speaking about a second ago, motivation kind of comes and goes. So I think from what we're doing, there's that long-term vision in place to provide sustainable cooling for the planet that doesn't compound that global warming problem. So I think there's always that sitting up there, but that's a great motivator some days, and some days that's not enough. And I think that's when falling back on that consistency and little daily habits you have kind of keeps things ticking over.
And is it still just the two of you?
We've got a growing kind of team, as we call it. Again, we've got a lot of people we're working with on a part-time temporary basis. So we're still working with Exeter Uni. We've got some companies in Bath on the hardware and software side. So again, they do things amazingly that I could never do. And I think that, again, is something to lean on when you're struggling for motivation. If there's people there with expertise in what they're doing and you're able to go to them with whatever the current issue is and say, we need to get ourselves there, that's a really, really powerful thing to do.
So if you had the chance to give your younger self a piece of advice, what would it be and why?
So one thing I'm learning to do now and still learning to do, but if I could have kind of started that process 5 years ago, could have become probably a bit of a superpower, is learning to reflect quite kind of intentionally on how things have gone. So I think I'm generally quite a positive person, which again has its upsides and downsides, and that carries you through quite a few things. But I think I have the tendency to, when I'm finishing a task and it's gone well enough, to go, lovely, excellent, job done, move on. And I think taking the time to reflect on the things that went well, went badly, that is the way to drive progress. And I think if I started doing that 5 years ago, God knows where we could be now. I mean, probably not here, I don't know, so glad we're here. But do you know what I mean? I think having that reflective cycle is really powerful. And again, not something I'm perfect at now, but the more I've done it, the more benefit I've seen.
I completely agree. And I think as busy as people can get, there are always those moments to sit for it could be a couple of seconds, kind of reflect on, what's been, what's next. And talking about time, what does a day in the life look like for you right now?
Get up in good time. I know this is very Andrew Huberman, but get a coffee in the sun, start the day off right, get you feeling ready for the day. And then all things going well, go to the gym, go for a run before work. That's one of those things where upon reflection, if I don't do that, sets me up in the wrong tone for the day. So again, something that you can learn from. But now I've made sure to prioritize that around everything else that's going on. The work days are very varied. Could be meetings on the phone, traveling to meetings up in London, but that will be the 9 to 5, maybe a bit longer, depending on what's required. After work, wrap up in as timely fashion as is possible and spend time with family, friends, the girlfriend. That's about it. Try and balance those buckets as much as possible.
And how does nutrition play an important part within those days?
I think that's something I've had a evolving relationship with. A common thread with a lot of people is fitness, training comes first, nutrition comes second. And that definitely happened with me. I think the first step is let's train. And then a few months, a year, 2 years into that, you realise your nutrition isn't supporting that. It's taken a long time for me to kind of balance a relationship there where you're fueling yourself with the right things in a way that is sustainable and enjoyable and works in a busy schedule as well. I think that's the hard thing when you're in a hectic day, trying to find something that meets what you know you need. I mean, there's been a million times you're walking down the street in London between meetings. Like, I don't want to pay 10 quid for that bowl of stuff I don't even want. And you're like head in your hands, and that's like another thing on top of your day. Trying to manage that, I think, when you're doing it right, sets you up well for everything else.
And how does Huel specifically benefit your day?
I love my food, don't get me wrong. But when there is that gap in your day where you need something that you know will fuel you right, have enough protein, for me, with training as well, is important. I think that's not always the easiest to get when you're out and about, but that will support your nutrition needs is invaluable. So having Huel to stick in your back pocket is a lifesaver.
I love that analogy of, almost having it as a weapon in your arsenal.
It is.
To combat those moments.
It's quite a powerful thing when you've got 50 things on your plate and you're going into an afternoon meeting knowing you've got one less thing to worry about, and you can kind of tick that box, as it were, and go into the afternoon prepared, feeling good, in the right frame of mind. No, you don't have to worry about that.
And with what you're trying to achieve currently, that 10% of your day is important. They will add up.
I think it's like everything is marginal gains after a point, and the one less thing you have to worry about means you can devote what feels like a lot of attention somewhere else.
With your incredibly busy schedule, what does your downtime look like?
Mental downtime and like physical downtime are two quite different things for me. I think physical downtime might be Sunday morning, coffee and a walk with a girlfriend. Absolute gold dust. That is like cleanse the soul, sort your life out, reset for the next week. But I think exercise is that kind of mental downtime. I think I had it yesterday. Finish a long day on your laptop from 7:45 till 5:45. You're mentally drained. You've been in calls all day, and being able to flick that switch and get some energy out or get some energy back is a really, really powerful thing.
Yeah, but you can't beat those walks.
Exactly.
I know exactly.
Sunday coffee stroll does the job.
Yeah. Coffee then girlfriend, but
yeah exactly. Priorities.